One of the philosophers who many people don't generally include as very important in the canon, but who I find very important in my own work. I use him a lot, not only in terms of understanding philosophical movements in an academic sense, but also in a very practical way in my coaching and work with individuals, is Marcus Tullius Cicero. And he's somebody who has grown on me over the years. I think that he is not sufficiently appreciated, and that has its roots. I'll talk a little bit where that came from. Um, it has its roots in, I think, the 19th century and how philosophy and its history have been looked at. Many people think of Cicero as kind of a secondary derivative thinker. He's not as important as, say, Plato, Aristotle, or indeed the late Stoics or Epicurus. But I actually think that he deserves to be placed up there at the top level. I think that in addition to doing a lot of great work as a translator and as a person reinterpreting classic philosophy, he has some interesting ideas of his own as well. And I find myself particularly attracted to him, at this stage in my life and career because of his eclecticism and the way in which he has articulated what kind of eclectic he is. And I talked about that in another video, so I will come back to that. But let me talk first about how myself I got into Cicero and developed a greater appreciation for him over time. So I actually have one of the volumes that I first read by Cicero. This isn't the actual volume. The actual volume was in the Southern Illinois University Library, but this is the Loeb Series. And as I was working on my Latin, and essentially doing it on my own, there's a whole story there that you can hear about in one of my other videos. I got to the point where I realized that I needed to start reading reading authors, not just reading little snippets of them. And so I thought, well, Cicero, he's an important guy. Let me go to the library. And I'm looking through his different works, and I saw this one, The Academics. And The Academics is a dialogue between several different representatives of different philosophical schools. And I thought, that sounds really cool. I'll check that out. Cicero is very tough to read in Latin, still is for me today, although my level is much higher than it was then. And it took me, going through the semester, took me about the entire semester to get my way through 10 pages. And these are not, particularly long pages. I noticed 10 pages where Latin is on one side, English on the other, so you can actually do some points of comparison. It took me a long time to get through that, and I was like, boy, maybe I bit off more than I can chew. I'll come back to Cicero later on. But I read the work, and I was really impressed with the fact that Cicero could take a lot of people's ideas and represent them in ways that I knew were, because I'd read other things about, Stoics, Aristotelians, academic skeptics, Epicureans, were largely faithful to what they had to say. And he was also giving us interesting background and reflections on the Roman situation and in terms of culture and the backstory. So that was my real introduction to Cicero, and I continued reading his works off and on. He wasn't somebody who we had to read in our classes or in the massive reading list for our comps and prelims, but he was somebody who I was reading. And then when I had the opportunity to start, teaching ancient philosophy, first at Indiana State Prison, I taught that class twice, and then in other venues. And also, to smuggle stuff into my intro classes, I started teaching Cicero's texts. And you can actually see videos where I'm looking at his dialogue on friendship or on the nature of the gods. I think those are the main ones that I did. But there's a lot of other great works. I actually brought several of them here that I love going back to over and over again. Cicero's On Duties, which is representing Stoic philosophy. The De Finibus, or On the Ends, where he's got a great dialogue going on between representatives of several different philosophical schools, and even the people who aren't being represented directly, they're being discussed. So Aristotelians, classic Platonists as opposed to academic Platonists are being represented there. And so this is a great jumping off point. What I really like about Cicero is that his dialogues are genuine, exchanges of view between people. And it's guaranteed usually that the Epicurean is going to lose. Cicero is not always completely fair to the Epicureans, representing them at their strongest points. But he does provide us with so much, great background and sort of exposition of what the schools think. It turns out that becomes incredibly valuable for us given how much of literature that we've lost from classical antiquity. So we know a lot about the Stoics in part through Cicero, who was not himself a Stoic, but who had studied under Stoics, who engaged with them pretty routinely, even fought side by side with them, if you think about, Cato in the Civil Wars. And he is good at putting across what their position is and in going into the minutiae and explaining it. If he hadn't done that, we would be at a severe disadvantage. We would also be at a severe disadvantage in terms of the Epicureans as well. And we learn a lot about the Aristotelians of his time and how they saw, the interplay between, say, philosophy and rhetoric or any of these sorts of things as well. One of the other facets of Cicero's work that I particularly admire and enjoy is the fact that he's a practical philosopher. He was engaged in political life in a number of different ways, in part through his arguing cases as a jurist, right? And so he understands that rhetoric is not only useful for its own sake or interesting for its own sake, but that it has this in very important social implication in terms of how the laws are applied or not applied. He actually goes so far as to write a thing about electioneering, which is quite interesting, but regarded by many as being very cynical in the lowercase c, not the uppercase c, which is an actual philosophical school. And what I see in Cicero is his capacity to cull out the practical implications of schools, like, say, the Platonist one, that we might see as very impractical, and to drive this stuff home, to talk about, well, what would be the effects of this? He's not the kind of person who thinks that philosophers ought to simply engage in their own leisure, that they should be politically engaged and involved. Especially if they're, in situations where they could exercise some power for good or for bad. He saw his own writing project, and this is another important point from where I sit. He saw his own project of writing all these books as a massive and major contribution to Latin culture. In a way, you might say that he occupies a similar role to Boethius coming centuries later at the beginning of what we call the Dark Ages. Boethius had decided to translate all of Plato and Aristotle into Latin from Greek. He didn't succeed in that because he was executed before that. But Cicero talks about taking all of the wisdom of the Greek philosophers and even orators and sort of putting it into a Latin idiom. And he's very critical of the people of his own time who are skeptical of this, who are saying, well, you can't do philosophy in Latin. It has to be done in Greek. Sort of like we have people today who say, well, you're not really reading Nietzsche if you're reading him in translation. If you can't use the German terms instead of English terms, you're not really understanding it. And Cicero would say that's bunk. The test for whether you really do understand it, can you put it into your own language? And I'm going to do that, he says. And he does do it. He could have accomplished more, of course, I think, but we can say that about anybody. And what he did accomplish is pretty massive. We've lost a few of his treatises, unfortunately, and some of them are fragmentary, but what we do have is a very substantive body of work that I think is, I pointed out, it's great because we learn about these great schools and what they thought, often down to very detailed analyses and minutia, but it's also Cicero showing his own hand a good bit of the time. So let me talk a little bit about his eclecticism. It's a very reasoned, very measured eclecticism. He thinks that it is important to know the field and then to select what you think is actually right. He does, in fact, identify himself with the academic school, but he's not a rigorous academic skeptic in the sense of being orthodox and saying nothing can really be known or anything like that. He is just as willing to draw on the peripatetic or Aristotelian tradition or the Platonic tradition, or especially the Stoic tradition. Like I mentioned, On Duties is entirely a work of Stoic philosophy with a little bit of stuff mixed in. And in the Tusculan Disputations, he actually says, if I was not a member of the school that I'm a member of, I definitely would be a Stoic. So he's somebody who is willing to try to synthesize the best in all of these different modes of thought, which I think is a very admirable quality. It's not just like eclectic in the sense of, there's a nice smorgasbord in front of me and I'm going to pick little bits and pieces and not try to make them actually match up with each other. He is really thinking through, what are the Stoics right about? Where do things go wrong? And he gives you reasons for this. And he has characters often exchanging and views and criticizing each other's points of view on this very matter. So, these are all things that I find just fascinating about his work. The last thing that I'll say is why I mentioned at the beginning that he's not really held in high esteem even today, and definitely wasn't during the 19th century. Why not? Because they were telling this story of philosophy that now we know is really not all that true, which is that, philosophy arises in the Greek city-states, and it's primarily important in, what Plato and Aristotle do, and then what the Stoics and the academics and the Epicureans do is kind of second-rate. It's not really as important as what these guys are doing. And then, people like Plutarch and Cicero, these people bringing things together in eclectic fashions, they're really not that important at all. They're not doing anything original. And I think that that's really bunk. I think we need a different conception of originality, and we need to have different standards of value. I think if we actually adopted a Ciceronian standard of value, we might say, I don't think we would say that he's more important than Aristotle or Plato, but I think we would say that he really does deserve to be on the same level. I know that he certainly does for me, and I am looking forward to years and years and years of having him as a companion as I read through his works and talk about them with others and teach them. So I thought I would share some of that with you, and now you know a little bit more about my own philosophical development and commitments, at least with respect to Marcus Tullius Cicero.